Let's take a look inside. Maybe not. Oops. Hey there, YouTubers. Me again. You don't know my name? Name's David. David Essig. Don't know why you need to know that, but just in case you want to. Anyhow, look at this jewel. Yeah, she was a nice little truck, but her previous owner decided to take her for a swim. And so I'm going to see if I can get it to run. It's the least I can do, right? He did pull the drain plug as soon as he got the truck back home. I don't know how many hours it sat underwater, but I'll give you a quick look-see through the truck, and you can kind of figure out what happened. This is the good side. And if I had the whole truck looking like this, she's got a little whammo here and there from when the old current took her down the river a little bit. But two things that I'm going to stress right now. One, don't try to cross floodwaters. And I'll save the other one in a minute when I start to do the walk around. And this part I don't know for sure, but it's going to be good advice. So I'll quit talking now. She went for a swim, got caught in some floodwaters, got taken downstream, and I'll show you what's happened to it during that little trip down the river. And we'll see if we can get her running. If we can, we'll try to fix it up best we can. Maybe somebody can use a cheap little truck, or maybe I'll just use it around the farm. I mean, it's not a bad looking truck except for a few dents here and there. But shoot, I'd drive it back and forth to work even. I don't care. But we'll see what we'll do with it later. Maybe y'all can make some suggestions. Suggestions. Yeah, that's it. Of what to do with it, you know. But let's take a walk around it, take a quick look at it, and then we'll see if we can get it to run. Now you see in the beginning, before you started watching this video, that I opened the door on the other side and kind of fell off in my face. And the reason I brought it inside is because even though it's a beautiful day outside, it's super windy. I wanted to do it out in the field, but it's super windy out, and this camera and wind, not good bedfellows. But as you can see, it's a pretty decent little truck. I mean, she's got some scrapes and dinghies. There's a couple of real good dings in here. You know, a little bit of ick here. Pretty good one right there. I'm assuming most of those happened because it used to be a pretty sweet truck. I knew him before this happened, and I think that might have happened during the trip down the river. But here, and I'm not saying anything as far as he still works, so I don't think he was drunk or anything, but this is in the back. This survived the trip down the river. You know, I'm just going to say, don't drink and drive. You know what I mean? You know, you can drink all you want at home, and like people out there that smoke dope, they can do that in the privacy of their own house. But why people insist on driving when they're high or drunk, I don't understand. But if you do it in the privacy of your own home, nobody's going to mess with you. So think before you do stupid crap. But anyway, I don't know that he was drinking and driving. Probably, hopefully not. But I just saw that back there and I'm like, I wonder. But anyway, this is the other side of the truck. She's got some pretty good scrapes, no doubt, from the trip down the river. This side of the bed's caved in pretty good. She's got a real good whammo right here. This is the biggest one, the door. The reason the door fell off is I'd have to show you the door itself, but it actually got ripped off the hinges. This part, thank God, survived, because I can get another door, which I happen to have, and put it back on those hinges. Inside, you can see just how deep this truck went, because this is water silt from the river up here on the top of the dash. Of course, there's mud down on the bottom here. But yeah, she's definitely took a swim. Actually, take a look at that. She's been up to the roofage. The story behind the door is he opened the door to get out, to try to swim away. It took a pretty good chunk of the fender with it too. Is when he opened the door, the current snagged the door and just ripped it right off the truck. So you know that current was seriously moving. Here's the bed. You can see all the water. That shows the water that's been inside the bed. So there you go. That's the story on the door is pretty intense. Must have been a scary experience for him. And we're gonna see if it'll run. It's been sitting in my field for several months, probably close to a year. I think I bought this before winter set in last year. I didn't even think about the gas. She's gonna have, oh boy, that's not a good sign. No cap. I think if the cap stayed on, we'd have been okay, but I don't see a cap. So this may get more interesting than we know. Let's get started. First things first, I just want to make sure that it's not going to be seized. So I'm going to try to turn it over with just the alternator. Well, it's not going to turn with the alternator because of it's just loosening the tensioner. So let's get it a little more, see if that'll happen. Nope, just broke the alternator loose. Alright, so enough of that idea. I guess I'm going to have to crawl underneath it and see if I can grab it by the... I guess I'm going to jack it up. I'm going to take the tires off anyway to get at the plugs. The idea is to pull each plug off and then rotate this engine to see if it has water in the cylinders. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull these tires off, get up underneath it, and we'll see if she turns by the crank. Now you watch this alternator pulley right here. I'm going to try to turn it from underneath. We'll see if we can get this thing to turn. Now I am not going to turn it a whole lot because if there's any, well, there shouldn't be any water in there anyway, but there's been no oil in it for quite some time. So I'm just going to turn it a little bit, and if there's any water in the cylinders, I don't want to pump it around either. I just want to see if she's locked up or if we have room to work. If I get her moved just a little bit, then I know there's hope. Well, that's not good news. She won't turn. Now, she could be hydraulic if there's any water in the cylinders. I'm going to pull all the plugs out. I'm going to give them a little squirt. And I don't know if I want to waste putting, 4 gallons, at least 4 gallons of oil in there to see if it'll loosen up. Don't know if it's worth doing that. She might be locked up but good, but we'll try throwing a little bit of juice in there and see if we can't get it to unlock. But let's try pulling the plugs out first, see what happens. Well, that don't look too bad. It doesn't look like it's had water. That one looks like it may have had water in it. Now let's get this last one out of here. I love these heat shields they put on there so it makes sure that it rips your hand to shreds when you're trying to get this off. Fortunately, I invested in a tool to get shredded for me. Now, as long as I can get the tool in there, we'll be alright. Of course, if you can't get the tool in there, it ain't no good either. There we go. That made life a little easier. It's a pretty cool tool. It's got some rubberized ends and shape to go around the plug. Let's get this last one out of here. I think I need a longer extension. Yep, longer extension unless I want to bust my knuckles. Which I don't really like doing that. There we go. See if any water comes out. It may have all dried up. Yeah. She shows some signs of water. So, what I'm going to do is while I'm waiting, while I'm doing the other side, I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit of transmission fluid in there and let it eat for a little bit while we're doing the other side. Let's see how that works. Oh man, he needed brakes bad. I should talk. If you saw my last video on my big truck. Yeah, she's due for brake job. She's down to almost metal on this front brake. I've got this handy tool for filling transmissions and differentials and what have you. It's basically just like a grease tube with a screw on top. Put your fluid in here and push it just like a grease gun. Well, you don't have to push this in all the way or it all comes out. But as you push this in, fluid comes out. I'm going to stick this in the spark plug holes and fill them as much as I can. Wow. Oh, it's running out now. Gonna make a little bit of a mess, but I've got to refill this now. That one took almost the whole. It did take the whole tube, so we'll have to refill. Alrighty then, I'm going to let that transmission fluid eat for a little bit. For those that don't really understand or know, transmission fluid is basically hydraulic fluid. Same stuff. And I'm not completely convinced that Murphy's mystery oil isn't just transmission fluid. Hydraulic oil, if you add red dye, becomes transmission fluid and or power steering fluid. Now there are different types. There's your synthetics and what have you, but in reality, it's transmission fluid. So let the cat out of the bag. If you're spending millions of dollars on Murphy's, hey, Murphy's works. I'm not going to lie. But so does transmission fluid. So I don't know. You make the call. Nonetheless, I'm going to let that eat for a little while, and while it's eating, I'm going to eat. I'm going to go grab myself some lunch, come back out, and we're going to throw a battery in it. Since I can't turn it by hand now, Chevrolets, and I've said this before with another Will It Run video, where I failed to get the Chevy loose. Chevy's got these little itty bitty 5/8 nuts on them. Mopar's got this big mother, like 13 or 15/16 bugger on there. I mean, it's big. And, you know, I don't have a problem with getting on the front of a Mopar, just cranking on that bad boy. Chevrolets, man, they got that little bitty 5/8. You put too much pressure on that and snap goes the weasel, right? But they've been like that for years. And yet Chevys are probably easier to loosen up. Once they do lock up, they're easier to get loose again. Normally you've got to get underneath it and pull on that flywheel. I'm figuring, let the starter do it for me, right? I've got no plugs in it right now. I've got some hydraulic fluid in there, or basically transmission oil. I've got that in there, trying to loosen things up. Just going to bump that key, you know, after it sits for a little while, see if we can't make a mess. That's the hopes, right? So hang tight. For you, it'll be like a minute, not even. For me, it's going to be 15 or 20 because I'm going to go eat. Maybe half an hour. I might splurge, you know. But yeah, so hang tight, and we're going to give her a go. I added a couple of quarts of transmission fluid. No oil. It's transmission fluid. Because if anything's going to loosen it up, that will. If I get her to crank, turn, any of the above, then I'm going to go ahead and make sure it doesn't start. I'm not going to start it. Just going to crank it. See if I can get her to crank. And if so, then we'll put some oil in it, and then we'll try to start it. So hang tight. Here we go. Woo! She turned. Woohoo! Alright. Now, I'm going to crank it a few more times. First, I'm going to add some oil. Then I'm going to crank it a few more times to get all that oil and schmutz out of the crankcase. But yay, she turned. So there is hope. Now and electronics are working. I got door dingers and bells and whistles and lights on the dash and woo yeah. So I'm going to add some oil. I've got 2 quarts of transmission fluid in there. I'm going to leave that in there. That'll help clean out the system from whatever junk is in there from the flood. Then, if we can get her running, then we're going to have to get her up another day. We'll get her up on a rack and see if she'll move on her own power. I don't want to really mess with the transmission too much and push a bunch of water through the transmission. So we might want to go ahead and pull the pan on the tranny and change the fluid on it as well. But for the moment, let's put some oil in this baby and see if we can get her to start. Yeehaw! Wow. Success is sometimes very, very messy. Now you can see there's water. See those water droplets in the fluid? So there was water in that cylinder. I had my creeper and it took a bath. I wish I had moved it first, but oh well. I mean, it made a horrendous mess. But it's free, and it turns like no problem right now. I spun her enough to get some oil pressure. Look at that mess in there. Oh my goodness. And I got my mat all nasty. That's what I kneel on to preserve the old knees, you know. But I mean, it's got compression, because look, see all the water droplets inside that oil? That's not good. But we've got all that out of the system now. It made a mess. Good heavens to Murgatroyd, it has made a mess. Well, note to self next time, put up some kind of a barrier. Whew. But it came loose. I am so psyched, stoked. Yep, tried to say them both at the same time. Doesn't work. But psyched, stoked, both of the above. So how would you say psyched and stoked at the same time? Soaked? Soaked. I'm soaked. There you go. Alright, so now that we've made a huge mess, let me get another mat, because that one's nasty. Put that one out in the rain, get it cleaned up. But I'll have to wipe my creeper off a little bit. But yeah, success. Woo! So now, let's put the plugs back in, get everything hooked back up, and clean up this mess. And see if she'll start. Yeehaw! Okay, plugs are back in, and wires are hooked up. I got starting fluid so people don't freak out starting fluid with upper cylinder lubricant. Plus, I poured some transmission fluid down the throat of this thing earlier, so when we turned it over, it would lubricate everything before we started. I'm going to spray some in here. There we go. And now, I'm going to see if it'll fire. I'm not going to run it very long because I don't know if there's water inside the oil, inside the gas, but we're going to try it nonetheless. Try a little more starting fluid. I'm thinking there's probably water in the fuel. And don't forget, she's been underwater and she hasn't run probably in a year since then. I'm just happy she's free right now. Fire in the hole! She's wanting to go. I'm thinking if there is water in the gas tank, then she is not only going to not run on water, but the pump is probably Shazoo as well, because these pumps are not very durable when it comes to that. I'm going to try throwing a little gasoline down in there and see if that changes things. Maybe we can bottle feed it. But we want to get some oil up through everything now too, so. Alright, I'm going to try a little bit of gasoline and see if that helps. Good old-fashioned gasoline. He wants to run. Why are the lights on? And the blinkers on? There's all sorts of stuff on that shouldn't be on. Alright, maybe we could bottle feed her once we get her running. Well, according to this gas gauge, there isn't any gas or water or anything, for that matter, in... Hope I didn't drown it. Come on there. Let's see. The lights are on. I don't know why. Well, she's definitely not got any fuel in her. And she doesn't want to She doesn't want to stay running with no fuel pressure, which I've had that happen on fuel-injected cars. Well, looky there. Well, the fuel pump's good, but there seems to be a problem. And I don't know if this is gas or if this is water. It looks like water. So I'm kind of glad there's a hole. I'm pretty sure that's water. Let's see. Oh, it's coming out of the muffler. Yeah, that's just water. How weird is that? It's coming out of the weep hole on the muffler. That's a lot of water. I'm gonna go smell the gas tank, see if there's any fuel in this thing. And if not, I'm gonna put some in. The fact that there's nothing in it is a good thing, according to the gas gauge, assuming that works. I'm going to stick something down in there and see if I can't feel or hear anything in it. Well, it sure sounds like there's fuel in that tank. I was tapping on it. It doesn't sound empty, let's put it that way. So I'm going to assume that I'm going to have to get this thing up on a lift and drop the gas tank, empty whatever's in it, because it might be water, and maybe put a new fuel pump in it while we're at it. But it sounds like it's worth putting some dollars into this thing to see if I can't, because I've got a spare pump actually sitting over there on the counter, and I don't know if it's the same one, but we can check a part number and find out. But if not, it's worth putting $100 into this thing for a new pump if it needs it. And a few gallons of gas. I've already invested a little bit in putting oil in it, because oil ain't cheap no more. But yeah, let's see how long we can get her to run if we bottle feed it. Oop. And this is fresher gas too. The stuff I was using was a wee bit old. So let's do that. See if I can get it to start, and we'll bottle feed it. Alrighty then. There you go. Sitting over a year after being underwater. I'd imagine she was underwater a good, half a day to a day. Fresh water, thank God, because salt water would have eaten at the wiring by now. And she sat for about a year with the oil plug out of it. And as you saw, there was still some water in the cylinders. So, and as you saw, she was locked up tight, could not turn it by hand. Took all of the plugs out. She was probably hydraulicking. That might have been why, because with water in the cylinder, you can't compress the liquid. So once we took the plugs out, hit the starter, boom, she went. Now, I ran a risk of bending rods and valves, but I figured I had nothing to lose. If it didn't get loose, then it was junk anyway. We'd just sell it for parts. So my gamble was zero, really. So I figured, well, let's hit that starter, see what happens. We'll see if the starter even works. Sure enough, we ended up getting it fired up. There is one of the, I think it's number 1, 2, 3, like number 2, right? Number 3. Is a humdinger to get that plug in and out because it's right behind the steering column, but we got it. A little cramping, whatever, but we got it. So she runs. We got a bottle feeder, so evidently the fuel pump is El Shotzo, or there's water. Either way, this fuel tank has to come out. Now, I did a video on taking the bed off, which did seem to be a little bit easier, but unfortunately that video got corrupted and it turned into like already had the bed back on kind of thing. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that with this one because even if I take the bed off, the tank has to come out and cleaned out. We have to get all the water out of it, all the fuel out of it, and we're going to put another pump. So might as well pull we're going to do it the hard way, the same way we did it with my S10, although I looked at it with my Sonoma. This one looked a little bit easier, maybe because it's a little bit later model. This is a 90, no, this is a 2000. So maybe on the later models it'll be easier. We will play it by ear, but either way that tank's going to come out. And I just don't think it's going to be a waste of time, I think, to take the bed off. So we're just going to have to do it from underneath like we did the Sonoma. That's another day. We're not doing all that today. That's going to be a whole other video doing the fuel pump, and I have to discuss it with the boss whether or not she wants to sell this as a running engine and let people know that it's been underwater, or if she wants to go ahead and proceed and spend a little bit of money on this truck and get it running and driving, because I'm going to have to pull the pan on the transmission as well, make sure there's no water in it. So while we got the tank out, we're going to do the transmission too. We'll do it all at once while she's sitting on the lift. So, there you go. That's the plans for the future. I am so busy. My shoulder's a lot better now. I mean, it still has these few spots where it's sore, but I think we're ready to go back to the Corvette. So I think this is going to be the last video on this truck for a while. Unless you guys get in the comments and go, no, I want to see it drive. Okay, well, then maybe we'll switch over to this. For once, I'll let you guys decide. But as it looks right now, I've done enough junk. I've worked on enough junk. I do need to fix that Jeep. I do suspect it might be the cam. So I am going to pull the valve cover on that. And that's about as far as I'm going, because if it turns out to be the cam, that's a bigger job than I want to tackle. So I'm going to try to farm it out to a buddy of mine. But that's where we're at. So thumbs up, Shaka. It's all good. She's a runner. Maybe she'll be a driver. We'll see. I did notice it's going to need brakes as well. So we're going to have to throw a couple of dollars at this truck to make it a decent truck per se. So we'll have to talk to the wife, see what she wants to do with it, and let you guys throw in the comments what you want me to do with it, and we'll go from there. So far, I have not that much money in this. I could easily get it back out in parts, but maybe we'll make her run and drive, and we'll see where it goes from there. Nonetheless, go back to the Corvette next week, God willing. Keep your fingers crossed, and please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends. I guess you got to hit the little bell thing too, so it'll tell you every time there's a new video. Try to get one out a week, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but usually at least one a week. So you don't want to miss that. See ya!